let me introduce myself. I have studied innovation for umpty years and have found sort of areas of collaborative innovation and so on that I think you need to know about, because it's very different than the standard kind of innovation story that is told through Schumpeter and producers and so on. So that's, I'll tell you more about that in a bit, but anyway, so that's me. Then we have a couple of other unindicted co-conspirators here. Let me find them. Well, of course, there's Erdine, my co-teacher.
Hello, folks. Thank you, Eric. My name is Erdine. I was born in a country that no longer exists, the Soviet Union, and then through some trials and tribulations, I ended up in Eric's class. So I was in your shoes 10 years ago.
It's true.
But the strengths of the body is getting better. I don't think I would have gotten in your cohort. I graduated from MIT by co-founding a company called Ubiquitous Energy. It commercializes a technology from MIT that produces transparent solar panels. And one of the main applications is transparent solar panels for Windows. From Ubiquitous, I became a venture capitalist at Flagship Pioneering, which is literally next door from MIT, although this doesn't matter in the virtual world anymore. And then when the online revolution began with MOOCs, massive open online courses, edX, Coursera will form, I came back to MIT because that was important to produce entrepreneurship and innovation courses for the world. And I went to the professors that I knew best, Eric, and I said, hey, can we please create a course by you for entrepreneurs around the world? And we did, and we created a wonderful course called You Can Innovate, User Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And I will be supporting Eric's in this course. And in particular, my mission will be to help inspire you to become user innovator entrepreneurs. So very nice to meet you. I look forward to working with you. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic, I think. And thanks for being in it, Erdine. Now, Jane, goddess of all, would you like to describe yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Eric, for that very kind introduction. I think I've exchanged emails with like a good chunk of you so far. My name's Jane Wu. I'm doing my PhD right now at MIT Sloan and Eric's group. And I'm really looking forward to working with all of you this half semester in this very new context. And I'm here to support all of you to get the most valuable learning you can from this class. So do feel free to email me. Do you want me to go into the course logistics right away? Okay, awesome. So this is a first time for us as well. We had some ground rules that I've sent out. I'll just kind of rehash them. But if you see some things that are more effective in other classes as you take them, please email us and let us know. We're going to try to be quick innovators and adapt and improve this if we have any new ideas. So for the most part, today we can try that if you want to participate, you can either raise your hand. That's a feature on Zoom. So if you go to like manage participants, it'll show up, and below there you can raise your hand. If you want to do something a little bit simpler, you can also just send me a chat and I'll be monitoring that, and then I'll try to like compile the questions, interrupt Eric at a good time, and then unmute each of you guys to ask your questions. So it's gonna be a bit clunkier, but that will be the best way. I think we'll try to do Q&A today, but we can, if you see anything better than that, let me know. In terms of logistics for the class itself, I know a good chunk of you guys are listeners, but for those that are enrolled, this class has papers that you have to submit each week, and except for 1 week, I believe, which is the week with Patriots Day. So those are going to come to me through Canvas every Friday at noon. And we've posted a pretty comprehensive document that describes what these papers should be about. You can find that on the Canvas site. If you have trouble finding that, do shoot me an email. It's pretty intuitive. It's under the assignments tab, and it's also under the home tab. We're going to be updating the syllabus quite frequently. So I'm going to put on Canvas, like when I post it, what date it has been most recently updated. So do kind of keep an eye on that syllabus as we go through the course. So you don't want to get too far ahead on the readings because some of those things might change. Of course, that's also great material. So if you do read it, it's not the end of the world. And so that's kind of the main things on that front. So papers every Friday, syllabus will be updated all the time. And yeah, I think that's pretty much covers the high level logistics I wanted to go over with everyone. So I'll turn it back to Eric. But throughout, if this class today, do send me a chat with anything, and I'll be keeping an eye on that.
Great. And let us just say that each paper is short, but the idea of the paper is that you want to immediately test out the knowledge that we tried to provide for you within that week. It's sort of known that if you don't play with the knowledge that we've given you right away, you won't really integrate it very well. So the pedagogical purpose is, here's something that we teach you, and now what you want to do is you want to test it against what you already know and say, well, do I believe this? Do I not believe this? And why? And give related reasoning and so on. So in effect, what you're doing is testing what we tell you. And then we are very happy and eager if you say, you know, it's all fabulous, but equally happy and eager if you say, you know, I don't get this, or I don't believe this, or it doesn't fit with my own view of the world or my own experience. We'll all learn when you do something like that. So again, these are the reason we have these 5 quick papers is that you will immediately take the material that interests you in the prior week and write and think about it. That's our purpose. Okay? So there any questions about the logistics and so on before we start the actual lecture? You're amazingly happy already. This is perfect. What could be better?
Sorry, maybe one question. I didn't miss it. As listeners, are we expected to do the papers?
No, I mean,
but could we if we wanted to?
Well, Jane, are you up for grading them if they want to? We can't hear you.
She's on mute, but I saw her.
That's my bad there. Sorry. So yeah, you can definitely send them on. So I forgot to mention what we're going to do with your papers. Again, the classes now pass fail, as all classes are at MIT for this semester. So your papers are going to be graded high pass, pass, and please redo. And what we're going to do is I'm going to grade them on the weekends. So that's why Friday noon is the deadline for those. And then we're going to have a pretty quick turnaround. So on the Monday of every session, we're going to take the first few minutes and we're going to highlight some of the key ideas. To echo what Eric said, this assignment is hopefully more for you than it is kind of a check mark or anything like that. We're hoping to get something out of it for you and for us. So I'd like to kind of feature some of the top ideas or just some of the more interesting ideas and maybe even share a couple of these papers and circulate them before class. So that's just a sense of what these assignments are intended for. So yes, do feel free if you would like to submit that to me. If you have access to Canvas, you can also upload it through Canvas. Otherwise, you can email that to me.
Okay, that's great. And we will, by the way, due to the evil capabilities of Zoom, we will be taking attendance of people who are enrolled in the course. Is that correct, Jane?
We will be, but with the new MIT policies, there's gonna be like some folks that are taking this class and because of time zones, they'll watch it asynchronously and things like that. So
that's right. So we've heard from a couple of people already, like who are in China now and who therefore this is 4 a.m. rather than 4 p.m. And so they will be taking it asynchronously. How will these things, the talks get posted, Jane? Is that automatic or?
Yeah, well, I should give a shout out. I think there's Soracrit and also a couple others that are actually here right now, even though it is 4:25 a.m. for them. So I'm going to give a quick shout out to those folks, but those will Zoom classes as they come through will be available also on that Zoom tab on Canvas. It'll take like probably a few hours after class for that to come through and for us to post it, but that's where all the recorded classes will live. If you have trouble finding that, you can obviously email me, but also the folks at STS are very, very helpful.
Great. Okay, so let's get started and we'll see how it works. Now, I have at this point no idea whether the material will go slower or faster when it's online. If if it's too fast or something like that, or too slow, just holler to Jane and say, "What's going on here, you idiots?" or something like that. Okay, so let me start. Here we go. Hope. And yeah, can everybody see that now? Are they nodding, Jane? Because I can't see anybody anymore.
Yep, we can see.
Okay, even better.
Yeah, it's great. Lots of nods.
All right, so let me start out then. Many of you, those of you in engineering, probably have never heard of Schumpeter. But Schumpeter, if you know a bit about economics, has been the guy who really shaped how we think about innovation. And he was in the 30s, and basically what happened was he assumed, and it was appropriate for that time, that producers were the innovators, while consumers just select and buy what the producers put on the market. So if you see that quote of his, it is that the producer initiates economic change and consumers are educated by him if necessary. He didn't even think that you had to do marketing research to find out what consumers wanted. The producer would decide what you wanted and educate you appropriately to appreciate it. Now, 100 years later, innovation management is still focused on producer innovation. So if you think about the things that you're taught in business school, you can see that arrow below. It's the one that sort of people call the linear model of innovation. And what it does is it says that a producer hires people, does marketing research to find out what are unfilled needs, responds to those unfilled needs by R&D to develop a product, produces it, and sells it in the market. And the way it makes money, obviously, is by selling the product at a level that is higher than that a person sort of doing an imitation could do. Because the producer has invested in developing the product, and so it only seems reasonable that he should be able to charge something for that development effort. Now, the way that that's ensured is things like patents. So you have this whole giant patent infrastructure related to the fact that these producers, we assume they are the innovators, these producers need to get returns on their development efforts, okay? So that's how it goes. Now, in the internet era, as we will see, Schumpeter's assertion is no longer true. This all of a sudden throws things up in the air for those of us who really want to run or deal with or operate in innovation in the internet era. It turns out that consumers also innovate, and in very different ways than producers. And there are huge implications for how we should manage the innovation process. So in brief here, what you see is and I will explain the information related to sort of how we know this, but what you see is consumers, people who are self-rewarded, innovating on their own. Those of you who know something about open source software, you could think about an open source software project. Somebody comes along and says, listen, I don't know if anybody else is going to want this thing. I'm doing it for myself. I'm self-rewarded. It's fun, or I have a use for it, or whatever. And so I will develop something. And then other people can see it. So you get collaborative evaluation, replication, and improvement. So in something like Linux or so, somebody starts at Torvalds, and then you end up with a lot of other people joining in and processes for making it better and so on. And then you get peer-to-peer free diffusion. So it's a totally different system than the producer innovation system. It doesn't involve pricing products. It doesn't involve paying employees within the project. This creates sort of enormous differences in how one might think about and manage the innovation process. You can't sort of say, you're my employee, so you have to do what I say. You simply say, if you want to join, come on in and help. That's great. You have no ownership in this thing that you create and post. You're not patenting it or anything else. And we are all giving it away. Now look at the enormous contrast here, right? Marketing, selling for profit in the case of the producer innovation paradigm, people giving things away and creating them at sort of no employed cost in the free innovation paradigm. Now, it really drives economists crazy, this kind of novel thing, because nobody's pricing anything, nobody's getting paid. How the heck do you measure things? There are no patents. What are we going to do now? So generally, the academic area of economics has ignored this whole thing. They'll just sort of stick with the producer innovation, thank you very much, and the patents and the rest of it. And therefore, for us here, it's really important to sort of talk together and understand this kind of free innovation paradigm. You'll learn plenty about the producer innovation paradigm in your learnings if you're in Sloan, but really you'll learn nothing about this kind of alternative paradigm. Now, what you also see there, you see the two are connected in that innovation designs come down to the producer and innovation support comes up to the free innovation paradigm. And we'll get into all of that in a bit. So, supposedly, remember I told you, supposedly consumers don't innovate at all. I mean, they just don't. They sit there and they wait for the producer to come up with something. And if you were sitting there saying, oh, I wish there were rum flavored toothpaste, nobody would assume in the standard innovation literature that you'd mix rum in your own toothpaste. You know, everybody would assume that you'd be sitting there yearning until some manufacturer came and saved you. But what we've done here is we've done surveys with colleagues of mine of 10 countries to date. We've asked each of these countries, we've done a representative survey. It's called a nationally representative survey. And what this survey asks people is, did you, within the last 3 years, create a product? We didn't get into services, we didn't get into processes. Did you create a product that works better than what's on the market? And then we also asked, as you'll see, did you do it for yourself, or why did you do it, and so on. But look at these massive numbers here. In the UK, that's the first one we did. See the top line there? In the United Kingdom, we found that 6.1% of the population innovates. That's amazing. That's 2.9 million people. It's further amazing because in the UK, there are only 23,000 people who develop products for people, for consumers, as a paid job. So basically, the people that are ignored in economics and in management outnumber the innovators that are paid attention to by Schumpeterians and by managers by over 100 to 1. It's really quite extraordinary. Now, this is the area that we're going to get into. We're going to explore these people. We're going to explore how they do what they do. We're going to be utterly amazed at the marvelous things that happen, I hope, and at the opportunities available to us all because we now understand these people exist. So in the United States, you can see there that 5.2% of the population, that's 11.7 million people. On the far side, you see the people who actually did these surveys. We're a community of people, a few hundred people now, who study this kind of thing around the world, as compared to tens of thousands of academics who study the standard way. So the 10-nation total is about 60 million people. Again, a huge number. Okay, so what do these surveys mean by innovate? Here's an example. And what I'm going to ask you about later is examples you have of your own. So here's a person, he was in China, and he thought to himself, you know, I was so proud that I could drag my suitcase around because it has wheels nowadays. But on the other hand, why shouldn't my suitcase drag me? Why should I drag the suitcase, right? And so what you see is that he said, fine, I'm going to integrate an electric scooter with a suitcase. And the handle will fold, so I'll be able to put it on the plane and so on and so forth. So he posted this. And other people thought, whoa, that's great. And they began to build suitcases of their own. And then commercial companies came in. And you see that in the lower right. That's a company called Motobag. And they're showing somebody zipping around the airport in a commercial version of this thing. And the interesting thing is, or an interesting thing is, that none of these companies mention this Chinese innovator. They just say, buy our marvelous XYZ. Thus sort of making firmer and clearer the idea that producers must be the innovators. Because this guy has no incentive to advertise that he did it, has no budget to advertise that he did it. So what happens? Somebody decides it must be Motobag who came up with it. Aren't they clever? And nobody is there to set the record straight. So now, those of you who are appropriately curious about methodology, I want to show you this. Each of these 10 surveys operates in the same way. What we did was we took people, a sample that's representative in a country. So maybe 1,000 people or so who answered the survey. And they were, for instance, if there were 20% college educated in the community, then the sample we had would represent that by having 20% of the sample college educated and so on. Now, what you see here is the first thing we ask, because nobody, when you call them up, knows what an innovation is, right? It's like, what? So what you say is, did you create or modify anything, a product, in the last 3 years? And then you say, and they say yes, right? 30% of them or so say yes. Oh, yes, I did. And then you say to them, well, what was it? And they say, oh, I invented that thing I just showed you. That's great. That's an innovation. Or they say, well, my stable burned down and so I rebuilt it. Now, that's not an innovation. So by asking them what they did, you're able to screen out whether in fact they understand the concept. But first what you do is you say, anything that comes to mind, did you? Now, the next thing we ask is, did you do it for your job? Because if you did it for your job, it's like Schumpeter, right? It's a producer. If you didn't do it for your job, in other words, there you were as a consumer hacking away on Linux or on that device, then, yeah, you know, it wasn't job related. So you go on further and you ask them another question. You say, was it available on the market before? Because if it was available in the market before, they were probably doing it because it was cheaper to make their own. right? There were dozens of those electric suitcases on the market, but hey, I can hack one together. It'll be fun and cheap. So then the final question is, was it functionally novel? That is, it wasn't just aesthetic, for example. Did it enable you to do something better than it could have been done before? So in the case, again, of that example of this electric suitcase, yeah, that enabled the guy to get around the airport in a better way. So yes, that guy would fit all of those available categories, and we would call him a consumer innovator. But we're really tough on this because we don't want to overstate it. And so what we end up with is, from 30% who would say initially, I did, yes, absolutely, count me in, we end up with 5 or 6% in the end. So we're really tough about this. What you'll find is that actually there are tons of people out there who do service innovations too, but this is just therefore sort of an undercount, but it shows still how massive the phenomenon is. Now, I want to just say, I'm going to continue on through a couple of more slides, and then I'm going to get into examples, okay? And then with the examples, we are going to ask you to each of you get into these rooms that Jane can create for you, breakout rooms, 3 persons per room. And we want you to share your own innovative examples. Again, our purpose being to actually anchor this thing in your own experience, this concept. So what I'm doing now is, yeah.
I mean, sorry, it's just trying to interrupt you at a good time there.
Yeah,
I wanted to let you know, so DT has been posed a question whether patents protect such innovations, or is there a workaround by big companies? And then Kenny had his 2 cents as well, and then George has also jumped in. So maybe I can simulate the excitement of this being in a class. I'm not sure if it's a good time to kind of throw in.
No, why not?
Let those
Sure.
folks jump in.
So go through each of them. Maybe can
yeah.
each of these people speak up and say it in their own words? Does that work?
Yeah, so why don't I unmute a DT first, and then I'm going to unmute Kenny, and then Georgia, and then you know, we can try to see if this will work. So DT, if you're ready, I'm going to unmute you now, okay?
Yep, perfect.
Hi. So my question was about, you know, the motorized suitcase that you showed. So I'm thinking that if he had, you know, some funds, could he have patented that technology, or is there always a risk that, you know, that a bigger player can come and just change the design a little bit, and, you know, circumvent or work around your patent? And so for a regular person who doesn't have the capability to manufacture and do distribution, it's, you know, there's no way around it, you know, because they can't do anything about it.
Yeah, so basically, as we'll see in a little bit, about 10% of the people are doing this for money, right? So they might want to patent it to protect themselves. But basically, 90% of the people are doing it not to make a business. They're doing it for the hell of it, as it were, or for some other purpose. And so those people would not apply for a patent, even though it would be possible to do so. Now, the other thing that makes patents unlikely is that people on average spend about $2,000 per project. A patent, in the US at least, costs between $10,000 and $30,000. So you got to have a damn good reason to want to do it before you'll go in that direction. But yes, you can. Absolutely, you can.
So my second part of my question was that even if you can patent it, couldn't bigger players like, you know, like American Tourister, like those kind of suitcase companies, just change the design a little bit and work around your patent?
Mm-hmm. So Erdine, you can pitch in, because Erdine and I have talked a lot about the fact that big companies are really pretty slow at all of this.
Oh.
Erdine, are you there? Can you speak up?
Yeah, I think we'll have a very good discussion of that when we discuss the principal agent problem and your concept of the low-cost innovation niche. And the reality is there is a lot that needs to happen at a company, not just from a legal perspective, for it to, so to speak, eat your lunch. And what you're expressing, Aditi, and by the way, Aditi is a graduate of a program that I founded at MIT called MIT Bootcamp. So very nice to see you here. What you're expressing is a common fear by entrepreneurs that, hey, some big company is going to come in and eat my lunch. And in all likelihood, that's not going to happen. And we'll certainly dig into it in the section of the course dedicated to user entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. Thanks, Erdine. Jane, who is the next person?
Yeah, so Kenny also jumped in with some thoughts on that, and then Georgia has an unrelated question, unrelated comment. So I'm gonna just find Kenny and have you jump in to make your point, and then we'll move on.
It's okay. I think the point was already covered.
Okay, sounds good. Well, for what it's worth, Kenny had an example that he drew upon for ML. So
I'm sure it was brilliant, Kenny, and you can say it if you want to.
Okay, it wasn't that brilliant.
All right. Then shall we move on and you say something brilliant? Yeah. Or okay, we'll move on.
Well, I won't put you too much on the spot then, but I'll move on to Georgia, who had a question.
Georgia?
Yeah. So back to those criteria, I was wondering out for job related, I'm thinking about an example where a farmer is hacking his tool to have a different function. That wouldn't meet the criteria, but he is the consumer for that product. So why is that not considered consumer innovation?
Give us an example. I'm not quite sure what you mean, Georgia.
Yeah, I guess so if a farmer has an irrigation system that he bought, so he's a consumer, but he uses it for his job. And so he somehow, hacks it and makes it more efficient or makes it do something that it didn't already do. It's still job related, but he's the consumer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So basically, a lot of this has to do with the sort of the definition of a user and consumer, and basically he's probably in business, right? He's actually in a business trying to improve the yield of his crops or something. So yes, he would be in Schumpeterian terms and so on, he would be a producer innovator. He's doing it for himself, just like a steel company when it improves its steel process. It's using the thing, but it's using it for commercial purpose. And there is a lot of overlap that we'll get to at some point because he's directly there and can see what he needs, and so he's better off than the company that can't see it. But in terms of whether he's a consumer or a producer, he's a producer. He's selling stuff.
Okay, even if he's not selling like irrigation systems? I mean,
no, he's using it as a tool to produce food to sell, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he would be lumped under producer according to the general categories. But I mean, really good, and we'll separate that out as we go.
Okay,
yeah, thanks. Sure. Anybody else, or Jane, is that it for the list at the moment?
That's it from my side right now, but again, you guys should keep those chats coming. We'll try to get that in at a good time. All right, Eric.
All right, and I can't see the gallery, so is everybody looking happy, I hope? Jane, you can see everybody's face, right?
Yes, I see lots of happy faces. Yeah.
Okay.
Lots of interesting backgrounds as well.
All right, good. So, here's the story as to why only in the internet age, consumers have been really coming into their own as innovators, okay? So when these people that you may or may not know about, like Schumpeter and Chandler, Alfred Chandler, were doing research that set into place how we now academically understand innovation, what you had was firms here that hired people. You see specialist R&D employees and equipment. And the users out there were all isolated. They couldn't really get together because there was no internet. So they only, each of them, could produce something relatively small relative to what the producer could make. And so really, in pre-internet ages, there was sort of no obvious way for these consumers to get together and start to build something at scale, like, for instance, Linux is today. And also, and this is something that you who are mechanical engineers and so on, who know about process innovation and so on, often when you were building something as a supplier, as a producer of something, you had to build the special purpose production machinery in conjunction with the design of the device itself. And so you really had to get into the design of the product as well as the design of the process. Now, here's what these guys were observing. You were seeing these giant factories just making all this stuff. These are both pictures of a Ford plant. And Ford was there with all his engineers designing how to produce this stuff at scale. And it was so much cheaper to get a mass-produced, centrally built car than it was to make your own car as a producer, as a consumer at home, right? It was just massively sort of more efficient. And so that's what these people saw. What they did not see, these people like Schumpeter and Chandler, what they didn't see was the user innovation that was behind a lot of this stuff. So basically, a lot of things like airplanes were initially user hacks. The Wright brothers were doing it as a collaboration, much like the Linux thing. They were sharing with other kind of early entrepreneurs. The same with balloons, and more recently now, the same with 3D printers. You had all these sort of hackers and so on. But the managers and the economists were basically looking not at those early roots, but at the people who were making the 3D printers or the airplanes at scale. So it was natural, in a sense, that these people would say, well, wait a minute, the consumer has nothing to offer here. But today, everything is different. It's amazing and it's so exciting. I mean, I'm just sort of amazed and snowed every time I see it. It's just such fun. I mean, I also invent stuff and play around and so on and have fun. And it is so different than when I was a kid inventing rocket-propelled bikes and all that sort of stuff. Today I could collaborate, but back in those days, I had to build a rocket and put my bicycle through my own garage wall without anybody collaborating with me. But anyway, so today, all these people, I could have gotten together with other people trying to, you know, kids my age or whatever, trying to build a rocket-propelled bike. We could have shared the effort together. We could have gotten this marvelous kind of equipment on our PCs, namely design tools that are just as good as the things the manufacturers have. So what's happened is the manufacturer used to have this huge comparative advantage in design because they had specialized machines that cost a lot of money to test things and so on, and production lines and the rest of it. And now all this stuff, I can be equally well equipped to any of these engineers with just my PC and relatively free software. So it's just totally fabulous. It's just amazing. And what you'll see is that that's what's happening today with the COVID virus. Out of nowhere, an online community can self-create in days, and it can out-design producers. This is a ventilator hacking communities. Many of you are probably vaguely aware. But we have these producer companies saying, oh God, you know, to really tool up and do this, it's going to take us months. And then you have all these hackers doing it overnight. And, you know, somebody figured out that a scuba mask, you know, and the scuba regulator, that's the underwater sort of thing, had a lot of the same features as the kind of regulators used in these ventilators. So all of a sudden they were saying, hey, you know, we can hack this stuff. We can actually, and here are the two doctors saying, thank God, you know, you helped me out here. I appreciate it. So it's really kind of interesting. If you think to yourself that a company hires a bunch of people, so it, for example, on its ventilator staff, may have 5 engineers working. And then you think that in the world, we all are consumers when we go home, right? We're all consumers. So all of us who are expert engineers and the rest, we're all consumers when we go home. And we can scale up with very good people. We can scale up something that is vastly larger than that company with its 5 engineers. And we can do it so quickly. I mean, it's just stunning. And the other stunning thing about it is that as far as economics and producer measurement and so on is concerned, this happens, but it leaves no trace in the data because all this stuff is free. So it happens, it's really important to innovation, but it's absolutely not visible currently. So now, I told you, I haven't told you yet actually, but basically innovation by consumers has 2 attributes. One is it's people who are paying themselves, and the other is that it's almost not at all protected by patent. Think again, open source software is almost always free. So again, it's something that is the 2 measures of free innovation is that it's done by people on their own cost and it's given away. Now, the consequence of this is that it raises social welfare. Governments should care. Because what it does is it says that activities that you used to spend on things that don't have a social value, like poker, let's say, or solitaire, all of a sudden you're turning some of that into something that can help others. Companies pick it up, as we'll see. Other users pick it up. So it really is a very valuable thing. Even though people are not doing it for money generally, it has enormous economic impacts, and we'll get into that in a bit. So it's fundamentally different, as I said, and the 2 operate in tandem, and there's a division of innovation labor. Basically, what happens is that, as I say, when somebody develops something, companies can pick it up if they think there's a commercial product. If I make a design for something, you know, all these things that you're familiar with, like for instance, mountain bikes, followed this pattern. Mountain bikes were developed by bikers who wanted to go down mountains. They took a standard bike, they went zipping down the mountain, the bike fell apart because it was a road bike and wasn't strong enough to sort of go down a mountain. So they got together and they built better designs and they called these things clunkers and so on, and they shared it all. And the result was that eventually companies said, oh, we'll produce that. And they took that design and they began to produce it. And what the users said was, oh, that's cool. You know, I'd rather be biking than building a design in my basement. So that's cool. I'm happy with that. The manufacturer got the design for free. The users ended up with benefits for themselves as well. Okay, now I'm going to tell you, I really want to get into examples. Let me flip further forward and then I'll come back to this. Okay, so the history of innovation is very much about people sort of innovating because they really need it. Here's a guy, and this was done in the early days when polio was affecting everybody and everybody was going crazy about polio and worrying about it and so on. And people who had polio ended up in these iron lungs stuck in hospitals. This iron lung, I don't know if you've ever seen anything like that, but what it was a giant bellows that basically pushed on the, increased the air pressure to push air out of the patient's lung. The whole iron lung sort of raised in pressure and then it lowered in pressure to suck air in. And people were in those rows of rooms. It was just horrible. They were spending their lives there. And so what happened was somebody said, hey, I know how to do this stuff and I'm not leaving my kid in that damn place. I'm going to build something which was a portable respirator and get the kid the heck out of there. And that then became something that manufacturers ended up building. I'm going to jump now because I can see also, well, maybe I won't. I'm going to tell you about a couple more, and then I want your examples, okay? So the suitcase seemed like a hack, and so maybe not so serious. But the iron lung thing clearly was serious. Users are developing something that are very important to people. And this is true today as well. And so what you see here is people with diabetes, type 1 diabetes, where your pancreas completely cannot generate insulin, began to innovate on their own to create what's called an artificial pancreas. So here are two people, Dana Lewis, who has type 1 diabetes, and her husband, Scott LeBrand. Now, about 5% of people with diabetes die overnight at some point because they make a bad calculation and their blood sugar drops too low. And the typical thing that happens, here's Dana Lewis, she's a type 1 diabetic. What happens is you're in bed, you've got a juice box by your bedside because you know that sometimes you're going to make a mistake and you want to wake up and you want to suck down some sugar to offset this thing before you go into a diabetic coma. But sometimes you wake up too late, you can see the juice box, but your hand will no longer move to pick it up. And so you die. Now, Scott came in and discovered his wife in that situation and saved her. But here's this bizarre situation. You have to make these analyses by hand, 300 or so a day, and you're likely to make mistakes. But this is what the producers are selling you. So what the producers are selling you is an insulin pump where you press a button and put in insulin that you think the amount you need. And you also have a continuous glucose measuring device, which determines how much sugar is in your blood at any point. What the user innovators did was they developed an insulin dosage calculator. The companies didn't do it. The users did it. Why didn't the companies do it? Well, the companies were doing fine selling you what they had. They didn't want to be responsible for any miscalculations you made in your own insulin dosage. And so they kept on telling these people who were dying, we'll get to it in 5 years. Now, remember that the people here, like Scott was a software engineer, the people here were in the consumer area, but they had been trained in all sorts of skills related to how to develop something like a artificial pancreas. So today, when you can buy things like Raspberry Pi computers, today they buy the pieces, 2 people start this effort and advertise what they're doing, 100 other experts come in and help. Meanwhile, companies like Medtronics have 5 people working on this. So all of a sudden, you've got a world-class group innovating because they really care and because they really need it. And they do it in fast form. So that really, hopefully, will tell you what a powerful phenomenon this is. So what happened with Dana is that because of this artificial device, her blood sugar level was better. It kept in the normal range longer. They posted the design on the web then. They didn't try to patent it. They posted the design openly on the web. And hundreds of other people began to use the design too. And then what you had, this was all ahead of the commercial companies. And then what you had was the possibility that these people could aggregate their information to test out the reliability of this thing and make sure it was safe. So it's an impressive kind of a system, again, that's invisible but parallel to and leads, it's ahead of, very often, the producer innovation system. So here's what eventually happened. Today, what you have is a Medtronics device. Medtronics is a manufacturer of these kinds of sort of devices for people with diabetes. And they made an artificial pancreas. That is, they incorporated this kind of calculation. So the only problem was that they incorporated sort of standard calculations as opposed to ones that were designed purposely for each unique user's unique circumstances. So today we have this interesting situation where now you can see on the left, you can use your iPhone. It's an iPhone app. You get something called a Riley link that connects it to your devices, and you end up for $250 with a phone app-based customizable to each patient artificial pancreas. The commercial solution, not customizable to the patient, is $7,000. So again, it's extraordinary the power and potential of this kind of thing. It's just fabulous. And you can all participate. Now, here's another one, and I'm giving you a few examples, then I'm going to ask you for your own. If you're in Siberia and you want to get around and there are no roads, what do? A car gets bogged down. Well, what you do is build this thing, which is called a caraca. It's on balloon tires, and people in Siberia build it for themselves. There's no commercial manufacturer of these things. It's fascinating. Thousands of them are built locally. And they go rolling around. So basically, before that, it was traditional sledges, and you had somebody pulling them or a horse pulling them or something like that. And then you have the caracats. And the only thing that the industry made for these people was this kind of very expensive commercial ATV for the military and for mining work in Siberia and so on. So everybody made caracats, and they still are. Massive variety, massive variety. Look at all these things. They're exchanging information like crazy. It's entirely outside of the commercial system. It's amazing and it's fabulous. Now, I should tell you about services too, but I want to, well, maybe I'll tell you about services too, because I want to have your examples in a second. So we have not measured, Jane, is there something you want to say or questions or answers?
Sorry, I just had to jump in here and say, before you move on to services, there's I think Ponche had an example of COVID open source, and then Aditi had a question related to the pancreas machine. Is this an okay time for me to pass it on?
Perfect.
Or?
Fabulous, yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but Ponche, maybe I'll just unmute you and let you share the information, that the comment that you made.
Yes, thanks, Jane. It's Ponce.
Hi.
I,
Ponce.
hello. I just wanted to elaborate on the example you said. I got added about a week ago to a Facebook group called um, Open Source COVID-19 Medical Supplies. It was started 2 weeks ago and now has 50,000 members. And an informal,
Fantastic.
and
Yeah.
an, yeah, and an informal survey about 2 days ago asking for to show how much products and how much involvement are there, showed that the members collectively have produced at least 750,000 units of different products such as masks, respirators, sanitizers. And what you can see, I sent the link to the chat group as well. When people click on it, what you'll see the behavior that you exactly described, which is someone will post their design and then asking for inputs on others how they can improve it. And then people would, for example, this particular face masks takes too long to produce through this 3D printer, and then people will comment, maybe you can adjust this and that, and then they would build on each other's ideas. And I think it's an excellent example of what you described.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Tell us, what is your background technically?
Oh, I'm in nonprofit actually, but I'll be transitioning to a tech firm after graduation. So I signed up to this course and wanted to be exposed more.
Oh, well, fabulous. Okay, I'm delighted. All right, Jane, you had somebody else.
Yes, Aditi had a question related to the pancreas testing machine.
Uh-huh.
Okay, my question was that, when you have open source design, like you showed the example of the pancreas testing machine, everybody around the world is collaborating to improve the design, et cetera, et cetera. Then to bring such a technology to market, can any, let's say, medical device company, just use the design and launch it in the market without paying anything to anybody? And also, like who takes the legal liability eventually that everything is going to work out fine, or do any maintenance in case anything ends up breaking later on when it's actually in usage on the field?
Yeah, those are very good questions. Andrew, are you around, Andrew Torrance? Is Andrew in?
I don't see Andrew right now.
Okay, because he's our go-to law person. But Harry, you can probably make a comment there. Would you like to?
Sure. So first, the responsibility, Dana and the other folks who've done this in the medical arena are very careful about how they present the information so that from their perspective, they're not incurring any legal liability, at least in terms of the folks I'm aware of. Can any big company come in and use the design and improve it? The answer is yes. And in fact, much of the approach that a Medtronic device uses is really a spin-off from Dana's original designs. So there is a danger from a company coming in and pirating the information, if you will. But that doesn't seem to stop Dana and her colleagues from continuing to improve. The interesting part about this is that, as Eric mentioned, Medtronic probably has 20 or 30 engineers working on their product. Dana has 1,150 people the last time I looked, working on their version. So just by critical mass, I think Dana keeps 3 steps ahead of the industry. The other part of this is the industry is obligated to meet FDA standards. Dana is obligated to meet what she and her group feels are reasonable safety standards. And the two may not, in fact, overlap.
Yeah.
I hope that answers.
That's wonderful. Do you have any, does that answer your question? Jane, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I don't know if Aditi had anything else to follow up on, but maybe we can keep moving ahead.
Okay. All right. So what I want to do now, so what you can see, I hope, is that this is new and it's utterly amazing because it's so powerful relative to the conventional wisdom that you're all going to be taught. And we're going to play around in this course and try to figure it out. So I think that's exciting. What I'm going to do now is jump to a discussion question for you all, because I think it's about time everybody had a chat. So what we've talked about now is innovation examples. Now, as I told you, you and I can sort of sit there and listen to all this, and then it sort of flows away. You know, it's like, I heard it, it's okay, gone. Those were not my examples. What's for lunch, right? So now what we want you to do, and we'll have breakout rooms, is we'll put you into discussion groups of 3 people each. And we want to have you talk to each other and hear from each of you for 2 minutes, like what is an innovation that you know? Either a user innovation, consumer innovation like this that you know, or did yourself. And just explain them to each other and explain why you did them. Why didn't you just sit there and say, it's really too bad a manufacturer isn't around to help me. Oh, well, I'll just die in the case of the artificial pancreas. Or, oh, well, I'll just haul my suitcase in the case of the electric suitcase. Okay, so Jane will now put you into groups of 3, and I think it's kind of random. Isn't that right, Jane, how it works?
Yes, that's right. And so I'm gonna put you guys into rooms. You can see it'll be set for 7 minutes. And so you can come back at certain times and then we'll jump through. Eric, I'm gonna also assign you to a group too, just for if you'd like, and then you can always come back and we can try to hop through.
And then, by the way,
so we'll give this a try.
Yeah, and everybody, try to come up with 1 example of the 3 you discussed that you can report back to us, okay? That one that you find especially interesting. Okay, thanks.
Yay, welcome back, everyone. All right, Eric, I'll let you take the lead.
You did it. That's fantastic. So I don't know, you know, whether we want, how many groups do we have? We have probably about 10 groups, right? So maybe that's...
we have 11.
Yeah. So is there anybody who would like, I don't know whether we should take the time to go through all the examples. Let's see. I don't know. Is there anybody who wants to raise their hands and say, yes, we really have a fabulous one we want to tell you about? Jane, do you see anybody?
I'm just scrolling through to see if anyone has their hands physically raised up. I don't see anyone that's volunteered on the chat here.
It says 2 participants raised hand.
Oh, yes. Actually, you know what? I see Helen's hand now. I see Felipe's hand, and then I see a physical hand with Xiaoying. So why don't we start with Helen, then Felipe, then I've got Georgia now, and then Xiaoying. Does that sound like an okay flow?
Yeah, that sounds fun. Yep.
Great. Helen, I'll unmute you right now.
Awesome. So the example that we talked about is from my previous company. I worked at Uber Eats relatively early on when it launched. And before it launched, there were obviously a lot of different reasons they wanted to look into food delivery. But one thing that they saw was that Uber users were actually kind of hacking the Uber system and setting the pickup destination at like a McDonald's or like a Taco Bell or something, and then calling the driver, asking them to pick up like this order, I'll pay you when you drop it off, and then setting the destination as their home and kind of using that to do food delivery in their own way. So I think when they were looking into that, they cited that as an example for a business case for building Uber Eats.
So this was prior to Uber Eats. This was people hacking the system on their own.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is absolutely great. And it's also, by the way, what happens on Twitter and everything else. Mm-hmm. People invent these functions like retweeting and so on. It's not the company that figures those out. Then the company says, oh, a lot of people are doing that. I guess we should decide that's a product.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so again, it disguises where these things come from. But we're going to uncover that. Okay, next. Yeah.
So I have Felipe now. I'm muting you.
Okay. So basically, I guess I can try and show you. I'm pretty tall and I hate having these books under my monitor so that feels better to use the computer. So designed these and built these speakers and that subwoofer, which is also like a stand. So it's gonna sit under the monitor to raise the monitor and have better sound at the same time.
Fantastic. Now, did you look around to see if there was such a thing commercially, or you did not?
I saw like stands, regular stands that are just or either have a drawer or some sort of container to put stuff in, and also raise the monitor. But I haven't seen speakers or subwoofers that integrate well. And usually the speakers that you have with your computer either sound very bad because they're small and cheap, or they're huge, and I don't have a lot of room here.
Yeah. So we would then, if we had been surveying you on the consumer survey, we would have said this was really an innovation. You didn't do it for your company, you did it for your own use, and it's not out there. So fabulous. Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations. All right. Who else?
So I've got Xiaoying, and then I've got Georgia and Maria. So Xiaoying, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. And I just found that the raise hand button is in the participants. I couldn't find it, so I raised my hand physically. And I would like to share a story about my father. Like, he studied engineering, and then he took out a career that has nothing to do with engineering, but he's really into it. So he had lots of like side projects in our apartments. He was modifying like almost literally everything in my family. And like when I was a kid, and it was like way before the concept of smart home even gets popular, he used to like hack our water dispenser. He like bought a timer and a switch and like made lots of modification, and then like our dispenser knows to boil water early in the morning and like stop during the day because no one was at home. So it was really impressive to me, and like how much like energy he put into that, and it's like nothing to do with like earning money with it. And he didn't really have a community to share, and he was like chasing after me and like tried to sell me about his ideas and what like the brilliant things that he just came up with in like what is the next version of his innovations. So that leads me that makes me really curious about like how these connections with companies and the consumers can be built up in terms of user innovation, and how this kind of innovation like really gets into the R&D loop of the producers.
Yeah, that's excellent. And we will get to that. And so thank you for that, because you also said that you were an elementary student at the time, and that you were sort of a little feeling guilty that you didn't pay more attention to what your dad was saying or something, right?
Yeah, because he really, really loved it, and it was like just not for profit, but just for the like his motivation of innovating something that he feels that's still not perfect yet, not there yet.
Yeah. No, that's fabulous. Thank you. Okay, Jane, one more, I guess.
Yeah, and Xiaoying, you got a thumbs up from Yifeng during your talk there. So I see people are playing around with reactions too, which is really fun. So next I have Georgia, and then Maria, and then Laura.
Okay.
So I'm actually gonna share my screen to show a video. But the context is, this is my boyfriend's apartment where, can you see this?
Yeah.
Yeah. His fume hood doesn't work. Well, there is no fume hood. It's just a fan. It doesn't actually go anywhere, but this suction is in a different room in his apartment. So we made this hose that goes from the suction all the way to the stove. Because we were setting off the fire alarm before. So.
That's fabulous. Oh my God. Uh-huh. And so it works, I assume, in some fashion.
Yeah, the fire alarm doesn't go off.
Oh, I see. The purpose was the damn fire alarm was always going off.
Yeah, and it's in a dorm, so it disrupts a lot of people.
I see.
Yeah,
that is
but
fabulous.
you know, we couldn't, install ductwork in the building to put a proper fume hood in.
So where does the other end go? How do you get it out the window?
Well, that was like the suction from the bathroom that had actually very powerful suction.
So you drew it to the bathroom and then fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. I assume he commandeered the hose from somewhere at MIT or something like that, right?
We bought it actually. It was well, it was a like some makerspace was giving $75 for a project, and this was a useful excuse to participate in that.
Great, great. Thank you.
That's awesome. Next, I have Maria, and then Lara, and then Sia. Maria, I'm going to unmute you.
Okay. So my example that we were discussing, I don't know if it really fits into the framework that we just saw, because there is a company behind already, but it's this company, it's called Threadless, and they do produce garments that are actually designed by the final consumer. So it's the consumer who makes the design, and then the company who, also the crowd who decides what to produce, and then the company produces. But the design, it's made by the final end consumer. So I think this is just a good idea, an example of where fashion can move to, like bringing in more the design from the final consumer.
Mm-hmm. And so you really, yeah, I know Threadless. And what really you're getting into is sort of how companies can connect with consumer creation and commercialize it in a way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we will be getting into that, because absolutely right. I mean, I think that's, you know, what you end up with in life. You know, we'll have these pure examples of pure consumer, pure producer, but life is hybrid. And so people will invent all these combinations. And that's one of them. And you sort of bring it up later when we get to that section. That's very good. Thank you.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, thanks.
And so then I've got Lara.
Lara?
I'm gonna unmute you. Let's try that.
So one of the examples that I kind of thought of was something that I like a small project I worked on. So I live in Utah and I'm a really big skier. And so one of the problems with like if it's a really low contrast day, it's really cloudy, kind of hazy, it's really hard to see like bumps or icy spots in the snow because it's all like really low contrast. So one of the ideas that kind of I came up with was strapping kind of like a light source onto your boot, and then having like some type of like filtered goggles that like basically increase the contrast so that you can see like the bumps in the snow better and stuff like that. So I ordered things off of Amazon. Doesn't necessarily work yet, and then it started getting a little bit more expensive to like keep ordering more, but just something that like it was definitely like would be very self-rewarding. It wasn't really, I'm an undergrad, I don't really have any like company experience or anything like that, but it was very much like it's just a personal project that like would be cool to get working.
It is very cool. And so basically you're saying if the light is on your boot, it creates sort of like contrasting shadows when you see the small bumps and so on.
Yeah, that was kind of the idea.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Good one. Thank you. Yep. Okay.
And then I've got Sian. I'm going to unmute you now.
Thank you. I want to share this example that I saw when I was working in a refugee camp in Bangladesh. And this is some lighting fixture invented by the refugee themselves. So like,
Sian, I don't know if it's possible. Can you potentially speak more into your mic? I think it's just a little bit
raise your
low.
volume maybe or something. Yeah.
Oh, is it better now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to share this example I saw when I was working in the refugee camp in Bangladesh. Is this lighting fixture that the refugee invented for their shelter. So their shelter is this box made of tarp and bamboo, and it's very dark inside, and there's very limited electricity available in the camp. So to illuminate the interior, what they do is to drill a hole on the ceiling and then and they get a plastic bottle and fill with water and then insert this plastic bottle on the ceiling, and this bottle become a kind of ad hoc solar tube lead the exterior light into the interior, which function quite well.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's insulated too, in a sense. I mean, wind does not come in.
Yeah, when wind doesn't come in, then that's still a problem. That's why we are there to redesign their shelter. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. That's another good one. Thank you so much. I mean, it's so interesting to see all of this activity, and yet it's been totally invisible to the standard analysis of innovation. So that's really what we're going to do here in this course. It's going to be great. Okay, so Jane, anybody else?
No, that's it.
Okay, so great. So then thank you all. I think this is fantastic. And let me go back to the presentation because I want to do, we're going to be ending fairly soon, but I want to, how do I get there? For some reason, I don't see my, shit. Can you, dear host, click the share button for me because I can't seem to have my, I can't seem to find my cursor. Jane, can you do that? Here, I'll exit.
I don't think so, but maybe let me try to make you a host and maybe that'll help.
Wait, got it now. Here we go.
Oh, you got it? Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. All right, so now let me go back a few slides as sort of the final thing that we'll cover in this session to talk about motivations again. Let me see if I can. Yeah, now let's talk about motivations for a second. So basically, we asked people why they innovated. So, you with your ski boot thing or your dad or whatever, we asked them to take 100% and break it out by the importance that it had to you in terms of motivating your project. And so what you can see here, this is, in this particular case, 408 innovators from Finland. And what you see is personal use of my innovation. That's about half the motivation. Help others, 12%. Have fun developing it, 13%, 22% learn from developing it. Now here's the point. All of those things in red are self-rewards. You don't have to deal with a company to get those self-rewards. These are rewards you give to yourself. The only one where you might have to have a transaction is the sell it and make money, right? So all of those other things, no company has to be involved. Have fun developing it. It's process fun. Like your dad did that thing. He was having a great time working on the water device. Learn from developing it. A lot of people develop hacks, for instance, to learn Python or something like that. Now they don't patent because, again, they're doing it for that reason, but here's the breakout. What you have is a mix of motivations for all of these people. But when you do a cluster analysis, what you see is that basically, and the cluster analysis is something where you sort of say, I'm going to group people according to their strongest motive. So what you see here is that 37% of the sample is I needed it. Almost all of the people in the artificial pancreas would follow there. I need it for my kid. I need it for myself. Somebody's going to die unless I do it, and I'm damn well going to do it. And then there are also people who are, and here we put together the fun and learning plus the, fun and learning together. These are participators. These are people who say, and I've forgotten the name of your dad, but this is somebody who's doing it because it's fun. Nobody ever goes down to the basement saying, oh, I have to suffer and create something again. Or you with a ski boot, right? I'm terrible at names, forgive me, but you with the ski boot light, you weren't saying, oh, I'm going to suffer. Oh my God, this is so horrible. I have to once again create something. Oh no, right? You're saying, this is fabulous fun. I'm going to do it. And then you have 11% helpers. Now, these people are the ones that you see like responding to the COVID thing. They might be having help. I mean, they might be having fun. They might be going to use it themselves to make a mask, like some of you said. But also, they're really trying to help other people. The reward you get from helping other people is, again, a reward that you feel in your own heart. It's nothing but a producer saying to you, congratulations, we award you the prize of the week thing. No, it's something that you give to yourself. And finally, only 9% of these people care about thinking about making a company out of this. Those are the household sector entrepreneurs. And they do exist and they are very important. But 90% of these people are doing it for some other reason. Now, what you'll find is that because people are doing it for things they want for themselves, they are faster than companies. They don't have to figure out if other people are going to buy the thing. They only have to figure out that they want it, or that they're going to have fun with it, or they're going to help somebody else. And so systematically, what you will find as we go further into this is that the companies are behind. The users are ahead. The consumers are ahead. Which again makes this whole Schumpeterian thing from the point of view of MIT innovators so bizarre, because the real innovators are not visible in the economic calculus. It's absolutely amazing. And you will find when you have jobs and when you think about this kind of thing, that again, you're going to be an odd person, an odd duck. It's like, wait a minute, you really think that? I didn't learn that in business school. So you'll have to have the power of your convictions. And therefore, I hope when you do your self-reports there, your 3-pagers, that you raise both the reasons that you might think this makes sense, but also raise the reasons that you think it doesn't make sense. So we really can all assess that and chat about it and come to some consensus. Okay, now, I think what I should do at this point, let's see here. Yeah, I think I should, this is a logical stopping point, I think, before I get into other stuff. So I think, why don't we declare that we've done it for today? Jane and I would love to hear if you say, oh, darn it, you know, if you could improve this course in some way or another, or nobody listens to me and I feel unloved, or whatever it might be, or you can say, whoa, this really works well for me. Because from my own perspective, we're all being forced into this, but it's fabulous. Potentially, it can be free education. So I'd love to know, you know, you know, it's so strange at MIT, I have a certain room size. And everybody who doesn't fit into that room has to go into a lottery, so we decide who gets the chance to listen in. This entire thing, if we can make it work well, this entire thing is going to open up education in the best way. There are no room constraints. It's going to be fabulous. So any comments you'd care to make about that, Jane and I and Erdine and others who are, you know, academics around here like Harry would love to hear about, okay? So maybe if you want to send a separate note or something saying how it worked and how it didn't, we'll try to make it work better and better. So thank you. That's it for today. Jane, do you want to say anything else?
No, I think that covers it. Just to echo, I will be checking my email and summarizing things. So do send it, and I can anonymize names if you want. So just share all your comments with us. So we want to make this work for you in terms of learning. So yeah, be honest and let us know. And if you see anything cool in other classes, we'll try to be nimble and adapt as well. So share, share, share.
In other words, if you see any user innovations in other classes, we want to steal them and use them in our class. Okay. All right. Thank you all. This is perfect. I'll see you on Wednesday.
Thank
Bye.
you all.